Welcome to The Beat, your go-to where leaders, founders, and investors share insights on growth, innovation, and business building. I'm Chitra Nabat, your host. Joining us today is Jayme Strauss, Viz.ai Chief Clinical Officer. Jayme, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Jayme, what is Viz.ai? How does it work?
Viz.ai is a healthcare AI company that takes a ton of different healthcare data, whether it's medical imaging, information from the EHR, ECGs. We take all that data and we apply AI algorithms to it to really help identify patients who are eligible for treatment, therapy, or have a disease that needs attention by a specialist, really. So in their medical moment of truth, finding patients, curating the data, and getting to the right care team to really improve patient outcomes.
Bring this to life for us. Let's get
sure.
more specific, because there's so many companies out there, maybe about 70 to 80% of them, who say that they can do similar things to you.
Yes.
And in a lot of the companies, the AI is not real. So what's your sweet spot? Bring it to life.
Yeah, so our AI is real. We'll talk about how we've shown that it's real, but really we were kind of like the founding company and like paved the way in with our de novo clearance for computer-aided triage back in 2018 for stroke. So we started in stroke and built a foundation there because stroke was coming of disease at that time where there was new therapies where patients were going to be eligible, and we needed to find patients early in their stroke process because every minute, you lose tons of neurons and time is brain. So we took stroke and built that foundation. We just received our second de novo approval for cardiac AI on ECG. So we've really been paving the way and foundation and approvals. When we talk about is it real, it is real. And one of the things that we've done is really focus on evidence generation and clinical evidence in the real world setting. Not just the validation work that you do for your FDA approval study, but really like, if I take this technology and I put it in tons of different hospitals and healthcare systems across the country and world with different patients, does it do what it's supposed to do? And the answer is yes. So we've been able to show, decrease in time to treatment, increase in, patient outcomes where patients have better outcomes. They leave the hospital sooner. So hospital operation efficiencies with lower length of stay, and really driving different ROI models and clinical evidence with over 100 publications.
Can you quantify that a little bit more in terms of, because when you talk about reducing length of stay or time to treatment, walk us through an example with some specific numbers.
Yeah, so we can use stroke, right? Stroke was our area where we generated a ton of clinical evidence and outcomes that actually led to CMS reimbursement through new technology add-on payment. We were the first AI company to kind of be able to achieve that. And what we really did was took a ton of different metrics looking at decrease in time to treatment, improved outcomes. So looking at the modified Rankin scale, which is how we measure stroke disability. And then also looked at hospital operation efficiencies in reducing cost, right? So the shorter the time that you're in the hospital, the less cost that the hospital is assuming, the quicker that ICU bed gets open for the next patient that needs it. So we reduced overall hospital length of stay by 3.5 days. We've seen significant, I'm talking about like, over an hour in reduction of length of stay and reduction in treatment time. So all of that has really improved patients and improved provider productivity.
All of that sounds very compelling.
Yeah.
How are you wooing the different stakeholders, right? Because you've got whether it's the hospital leadership, the health system leadership, doctors, nurses. Talk about your process to acquire stakeholders, retain, engage, the translation to the sticky revenue.
So you have multiple stakeholders depending on the disease state, right? And the area of like what you're focused at. So I think one of the things starting early in the product life cycle, we design products with care teams. So it's not just us building a product. We have a really robust like design process with UX UI where we actually go in and we take these really complex workflows and we look at where are patients falling through the cracks? Where do they not get to the right specialist? Where do they not get the right risk stratification? And with that time and the workflow development we then build solutions and we take it back to the care team. And when we talk about care team, a lot of time we think of physicians and nurses, but there's so many other stakeholders in the care process, right? You have clinic schedulers, you have APPs, you have your nurses, you have your MAs. There's all of these people that touch the patient. So what is the solution that needs to be built for every stakeholder in that patient journey, and that's how we operationalize it. So we are a strong team of clinicians at Viz. So, lots of nurses, physicians that have worked in healthcare. We understand it, and we work on the ground to really be able to do that. When we're going into hospitals and health systems, you have different layers. You have your administrative, like CMO, CIO. What is the value that you're going to bring from them from a cost perspective, reducing, delays and really looking at how do we not lose patients. And then for the stakeholders, the users, the care team, we work with them to really give them meaningful solutions and then work with them to collect data so we can then show the impact that we've made at their site level that they can take to better their programs.
What you've described there involves a lot of specialization, customization, because you talked about this immersive model, working with your stakeholders in each of the health systems versus standardized solution. So when you've got the balance of that, how do you get to market adoption at scale?
Scalability. Yeah, so scalability. So I think one of the things that you'll see is once you've met with certain types of health systems, whether they're academic, communidemics, community hospitals, once you've kind of built a solution for a group of them, it all kind of follows the same process. You don't get too much deviation from that. Maybe different users, like maybe a pharmacist is really heavily involved in a workflow, but that's easy. We just add them into the workflow. But I think that you do need to do some customization based on your user persona as well as the type of organization, because otherwise you're just trying to throw AI at healthcare without actually getting into where is the care breaking down within that health system. So what we have found of once we've done it a couple of times at similar systems, it does then scale to broader adoption, but it's in that beginning early access, early availability of working to understand the solutions and how do we tailor them for scaling.
What's the biggest barrier you still face? Because with all that compelling data and evidence that you've discussed, what's the biggest barrier and how do you get over it?
Yeah, so the biggest barrier right now I think we're seeing in health systems is really there's one, resources and bandwidth, right? So there's a lot of vetting that goes into bringing in these solutions to make sure they're going to protect the data, highest level of privacy, security. It's going to give us an ROI. The cost is worth it. So I think some of the biggest barriers and challenges is bandwidth of resources on the health system side. And we really try to work to partner with them to say, how can we help you build the business case? What is the data that you need? Having a data trust center where it's easy accessible. But then it's also, there's a lot of AI companies out there. And I think it's on the panel we were just talking about, how do you vet them? That they're really good companies and going to make an impact. So the competitive landscape, while it's great because it makes everybody better as a company, it does become very cumbersome for the health system to do all of these different evaluations and find solutions.
On the AI side, where are the specific AI technologies that you're using at scale and innovating next?
Yeah, so we just received our 13th clearance. So we've really worked across, we have robust on imaging side and radiology for neurovascular disease as a whole, cardiovascular disease, vascular, and we're really now branching and innovating into oncology, right? Where do we actually provide tooling and solution, identifying patients earlier in their disease process to get them to the right cancer navigation team, the right providers that are specialized in their treatment, and also rare cardiovascular disease. We had our hypertrophic cardiomyopathy approval, but there's so much more in rare cardio disease that we need to work through, especially with novel therapies being developed. It's really important to catch patients early in their journey before they are too sick to get treatment.
Leadership.
Yes.
In life and business, there are rules, codes, norms to how things are done.
Yes.
Where have you been a code breaker and how did you do it?
Oh, yeah. So I have definitely, so my previous world before joining Viz, I was in hospital and health systems and really built clinical service lines. And I think from a leadership perspective, I was kind of more of the one to always be more innovative and push people to be innovative. A lot of people early on, and even still now, are scared of health, digital health and disruptive technologies. But if there is evidence that shows that it is better for patients, you almost have to do it. And you're almost doing a disservice to the community if you're not. So I think I was a leader in the space of driving and kind of pushing boundaries in people's comfort level of adoption of AI into programs. And at Viz, I really pushed us to be a different type of AI company where we actually focused on clinical evidence. You'll see a ton of companies here that don't have evidence. They haven't shown that it makes an impact on patients and providers. And I really pushed the boundaries with our CEO, Chris Mancy, of saying like, hey, we need to invest in this. We need to do this because it's what's going to be better for us from a scaling perspective, but also build trust and confidence with our users.
Jayme,
yes.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.